Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is David Hood with TigerNet again with a money background. And that's the reason for this video is after posting Will Clemson leave the ACC the other night, people had some questions about the money. And I think it has, pretty well been touched upon exactly what type of deficit that Clemson would be looking at should the Tigers stay in the ACC. But, maybe we'll do this quick video before I go eat supper just to kind of go through the media rights deals and how it pertains to Clemson and the other schools across college football. So it's all about the money. And I saw a poster the other night saying, hey, what does money have to do with it? What other schools have left their conferences and been successful? And I can touch on that for just a second. But I'll start by saying this with the Orange Bowl, bowl games, especially big bowl games like that. Great place to meet people, great place to meet money people, people who are in charge of bowl games. And at one of the meals that we had, I sat with a gentleman and we were talking about the brand new media rights deals for the SEC, for the Big Ten. And he said something that not only stuck with me, but is something that I've read a lot since then. And he said, we always talk about the Power Five, the ACC, the SEC, the Pac-12, the Big 12, the Big Ten. And he said, going forward, the Power Five exists no more. It is the Power Two. It is the Big Ten, and it's the SEC. And I thought, that's saying a lot from somebody who's tied into the college football playoff, to the big bowl games, to the money that goes on in college football. There is only a Power Two now, and it is those two conferences. So I've seen it written in other spots since then. I'm probably going to use it at some point. But let's take a look at what Clemson is supposed to make with the current deal through the ACC. Now, when this was signed back in, I think 2016 was when it was. It's a pretty big deal, a little over, something over 400 million. And right now, Clemson 31.5 million, 31.6 million, something like that's what they're making. Now, their SEC brethren last year got about $55 million. It's a pretty good chunk of change. And, you're starting to see it. These SEC schools are going bigger staffs, bigger facilities, more facilities. Excuse me, that pollen's really getting to me. But being able to use that money in different ways. So there's a gap, perhaps not the big gap that everybody would, look at right now and say, oh, it's okay. But, the SEC redid their media rights deal, then the Big Ten followed. So now I'm going to share my screen for just a second and show you this great graphic right here. So the Big Ten media rights deal, if you can see my mouse there, starts in 2023. The media partners are Fox, NBC, and CBS. For everybody that's used to the CBS having that SEC game of the week on Saturday, that will go away after this year, and they will become a Big Ten partner just almost in full. Fox will also have the big noon Saturday game of the week. That deal goes 7 years. It expires in 2030. Total over $8 billion, $8.05 billion, as you can see there, and an average value for the conference of $1.15 billion. That's an average value for the conference. And if you come down, the ACC getting $240 million with the current deal. That deal went 20 years, or supposed to go 20 years. Ends in 2036, longer than any other deal on here, even though it is now, however old it is. It's like, oh my goodness, what is going on with the ACC? When they signed the deal, did they think it was great? Seems like now you look back on it in hindsight and you go, not so good. So what this means is, yes, the ACC right now about 31 million. Maybe by the end of the deal, I've seen something that says they could be averaging around 40 million. Okay, so not a terrible number, but that's later on in the deal that they would be averaging that. So what we've heard with the Big Ten is probably somewhere around $75 million per school. And that is going to start this year. So that's a deficit for the ACC schools of, over $40 million. The SEC deal, which is supposed to start in 2024, they went solely with ESPN and their streaming partners. It goes 10 years. and it's $7.1 billion, $1 billion under that huge deal with the Big Ten, an average of about $710 million over the life of the deal. And it's just incredible, the amount of money that is going in. So now the SEC, you saw this past year, 55 million, 51 million, somewhere in there. They will also be in that 70 million kind of plus range. And the ACC simply doesn't have a way to keep up with that. Now, the Pac-12, their media rights deal expires in 2024. They have lost both UCLA and USC, and they are trying to renegotiate a deal now. But apparently Fox has no interest in re-upping with them, and they have looked at streaming networks, anybody that would be amenable for everybody in the conference. But we know that the Big 12 is coming hunting those guys, because the Big 12, though, they've got a deal that starts in 2025, $2.6 billion, an average value of about 200 million. But they've added what we would call group of 5 teams to the conference, but they are looking to add maybe a Utah, maybe a Arizona State, Colorado. I think somebody is probably going to wind up back there, but not going to be a part of that big Power 2. And the ACC, there, from everything that I'm hearing, there's just not a lot of interest from the networks now that they have paid all of this money to the Big Ten, to the SEC, in renegotiating the deal. So you're kind of stuck through 2036 with the deal. So you see Notre Dame, they're down there. Look, I mean, their deal is pretty good too, just with NBC. Big Ten basketball has a contract with CBS. So that's what's going on right now. The Pac-12, who knows what's going to happen with them? I've told you before, I think that they are a conference that is kind of a dead man walking. The ACC with that $4.8 billion deal, great money. Maybe back when it was signed, you take a look at it and you go, man, this is great stuff. But again, about a $240 million deal for the conference, and the schools 31 may end up around 41 million. All right. So for the person, I'm going to stop the sharing. We're going to go back to the full screen here. So for the person that said, what about the money? Well, this is where a lot of your paying extra coaches comes in, being able to hold football camps, being able to send out the coaches on the road recruiting, being able to get them in airplanes, helicopters, if you're Kirby Smart down at Georgia, just anything that has to do with a football program, being able to travel. And part of the problem too is, when you come to the money sharing and you say, okay, well, Clemson, maybe even a Florida State might join the college football playoff this year and get money from that. Don't forget that every time Clemson has gone to the college football playoff, each of those 6 trips, 4 trips to the national championship, earned all of that money. Wake Forest gets just as much of that as Clemson does. In fact, Clemson has to share that with the Atlantic Coast Conference, and Wake Forest and Duke and Georgia Tech and everybody else gets the same amount that Clemson does for Clemson making the college football playoff. That's another big sticking point. So does the money matter? Absolutely, it does. It isn't changing conferences just for, hey, we're going to change a conference today. Does the money matter? Absolutely, it does. When you're talking about this and falling even further behind in the facilities race, in the arms race, and trying to keep up with coaches, paying everybody, the football camps, it does. It really, really matters. So ACC, they're going to be able to redo a deal? Don't think so. Is Clemson still looking to get out? Absolutely. I think that they are. And then, I think people look at it and they go, oh, well, it's, the SEC, that matters. The Big Ten, it matters where we go. We want to be in the SEC. And, I would say that from a geographic standpoint, yes, the SEC makes all the sense in the world. I would say from a historical standpoint, the SEC makes all the sense in the world. The Big Ten doesn't make a lot of sense. People say, well, what about a volleyball team traveling? Yeah, well, if you're getting $70-something million a year, and, oh, by the way, I think that they would probably be able to renegotiate this deal if they were to add, say, a Clemson and a Florida State, then all of a sudden maybe you're looking at 80-85 million. Well, that pays for a lot of travel for teams. Does it make a lot of sense from a travel standpoint? No, it doesn't, but you got to be able to keep up. And again, it's kind of what I'm pointing to. You're either going to be in the Power 2 or you're going to be out, because those Power 2 are going to run the college football playoff at some point. It may wind up being those 2 playing for a championship, and you just can't get left out. So it's about the money, absolutely, but it's about even more of that. You've got to be a part of that Power 2. We're going to drop a little bit more. I like doing these videos. If you like this one, just kind of let me know. it kind of enables me to explain things without having to sit down and write out a 2,000 or 3,000 word story. And if you need a graphic, if you want me to post that graphic on the board, I'd be happy to. That kind of shows the media rights deals and kind of what everybody's facing. All right, this is David Hood. We've got the NFL draft tonight. Enjoy that, and we'll talk later.